So Colin wanted me to sort of set the stage here, how I'm going to do this. So I want to talk a little bit about culture and how it relates to JumpCrew and sort of my philosophies on culture. I'll introduce the panel, and then we're going to have a great discussion. So I promise I'll do my best, I should say, to not ramble, but I sort of want to contextualize what we're going to talk about. To me, culture is one of the biggest drivers in a growing organization. I consider it the factor that really cultivates a happy and positive environment to work in. I've always told my teams that if we're not going to have a good time, there are easier ways to make a living, and let's just not do it. I consider culture to be the factor that drives camaraderie, the excitement your salespeople feel for a job well done, the enthusiasm with which you hope your entire company shows up to work every day. When I started at JumpCrew in early 2017, Colin's right, I was one of the first 30 or so hires, and sales were really good, and morale was really great, but we were scaling super quickly, and I knew that if we didn't tighten up on culture, if we didn't nail down our cultural identity, that it was going to get super sloppy moving forward. So I really put a big emphasis on that. So I'm going to introduce two of my favorite JumpCrew props to you that will certainly make it into the JumpCrew archives one day, and I'll explain them. So in the early days, I would walk the rows. I'd walk the sales floor, and I'd listen to people making calls. And I heard some great calls, and I heard some not great calls. I'd hand out high fives, and reps would ask me to get on a call and handle objections and show them how to ask the really tough questions during the sales process. Sometimes I would just let those calls kind of roll. Because I think those are really great learning moments, to listen to sort of a not great call, to let it happen, and then to provide feedback. What I would do to get that feedback, oh man, my props are gone. Oh man, Courtney Hooks is going to laugh. You know what this is? This goes on the bottom of your chair and helps you adjust the height and lumbar of your chair. But in 2017 at JumpCrew, this was a microphone. This was a microphone. And I would use this in real time to get feedback from reps. I would go, Casey, that was sort of a cruddy call. Don't you think you could have handled that objection a little bit better? And next time you make that same call, what are you going to do differently? Dave, what did you do last time you got that objection? And what I was doing is I was breaking down the barrier and the embarrassment somebody has if they have a not great sales call. The point I was trying to drive home is that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not have an excellent call. Not every call is going to be great. Everybody gets that. But let's socialize what worked really well. Let's socialize what didn't work, and let's just talk about it. And it worked. We have a really great culture of openness at JumpCrew. We have an open office, open floor plan, and we talk about everything. When things are going really well, the rep stands up and announces what went really well. When something goes terrible, rep goes, I just left the worst voicemail in the history of voicemails. And they get a round of applause. The other prop, this is great. So the other prop is this ridiculous gold chain, and I'm going to demonstrate. So I'd put this gold chain on reps when they had, or when they did a really great call. And the point of this, to me, this represented, JumpCrew, we don't do egos, right? Everybody, it's a pretty flat organization. And if you're a salesperson, you've had an excellent call, or you just closed a great deal, I'm really proud of you, and that's great. But I'm going to put this chain on you. You're going to look ridiculous, and I'm going to ask you to help the person next to you make a really great call too. So this is, it looks ridiculous. I think we can all agree. And it's a humbling thing. It's great if you're a salesperson and you're crushing it, but let's bring it down a notch, and let's help everybody around you make great calls just like that. So to me, that really embodies culture. Culture I also consider to be doing what you say you're going to do. It's holding yourself and your colleagues accountable. And one of the most important qualities of JumpCrew, it's grit, right? It's determination. It's getting the job done no matter how hard it gets, and it's doing things the right way. Like that, I think, is a really, really great culture. So for the purposes of this panel, we're discussing culture as it relates to the functions of hiring, motivating, and training sales teams. So I'm fortunate to have a great panel. Really excited to introduce these guys. Eric Hazelton is the RVP of Sales at Salesforce. Eric's responsible for driving revenue in Salesforce's small and mid-sized commercial accounts. Across the Southeast, Eric has a track record of building incredibly dynamic sales teams who focus on customer needs and customer satisfaction as a means to drive over $25 million in new and recurring revenue. Eric is from Toronto, Canada, started his career with Salesforce Canada, spending 4 years as an individual contributor before moving into leadership, and then relocating to Atlanta with his fiance then, now wife, to help spin up the Salesforce office, now known as Salesforce Tower Atlanta. When not building amazing sales teams, Eric spends a large portion of his time exploring the Southeast with his wife and daughter. Thanks for being here, Eric.
Thank you.
Grant Barnes is the Director of Business Development at Dialpad. Dialpad is a video, voice, and messaging platform for data-driven sales organizations. Dialpad helps teams make smarter calls, delight their customers, connect globally, and a bold line, crush quota. Grant is passionate about hiring and developing talent, building processes, and scaling teams. Before Dialpad, he was the Senior Director of Sales Development for Tenfold and worked as a sales manager at Cloudera for more than 3 years. It's also important to note that at Cloudera, Grant was on the inside sales team and helped lead them through their IPO, which is obviously an accomplishment that doesn't happen by accident. And well done, Grant. Thank you for being here. Tyler Shepard joined forces with JumpCrew in 2018 as the Director of Sales in our Florence, Kentucky office. He recently got promoted to VP of our small and medium business. Round of applause for Tyler. Congratulations. Tyler's a talented sales leader, has increased sales by over $1 million, has grown staff by over 100%. He's increased overall profitability. He's redeveloped an internal management structure, created fresh, new ideas for culture that did not exist prior to his leadership. Super happy to have him on the panel. Thank you, Tyler. Ellie Bartholomew has specialized in talent acquisition for almost 10 years. She started her career at a boutique staffing firm where she fell in love with matching talent with great opportunity and culture. From sales roles to marketing, IT, administrative, and executive roles, Ellie's mastered the art of recruiting, especially in high-growth organizations like JumpCrew. So in 2016, Ellie was recruited to JumpCrew and currently leads the talent acquisition team for the entire organization. A fun fact about Ellie, Ellie can do the worm. She did it on my birthday. It was weird, but she can do it. I won't ask you to do it. Maybe at the happy hour tonight, she'll be in a different mood. Brian Trautschold is the co-founder of Ambition, a sales enablement tool for KPI-driven sales teams. My favorite line on Ambition's website is, you're a sales manager, not a mathematician. Thank you.
I agree.
I am not a mathematician. You got it. Ambition gives sales leaders the tools they need to develop sales reps into stronger salespeople so that every person on the team becomes a high performer. He's from Chattanooga, where he lives with his wife and 2 children. Brian's an all-around good guy. Super happy to have him on the team. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Ellie, I'm going to pass the first question to you. You've been at JumpCrew literally since day one. We've grown a ton, and you've seen an enormous amount of change from 6 to 7 employees to more than 350. So in your opinion, how does a company like JumpCrew manage such growth and transition and still maintain the culture they started with?
So it definitely starts with knowing your values as an organization, right? Knowing who you want to be, knowing what it is you stand for and what you want to accomplish. Knowing where you're looking to go, right? Beyond that, it is all about the people that you hire. You have to hire people that reflect the values of the organization, that embody the mission and vision of the company.
Give me 3 bullet points. Give me three good takeaways.
I'm nervous, y'all. So earlier this year, JumpCrew went through an effort to hire 100 people in 100 days. And it really took the full company supporting the team to be able to accomplish it. It's amazing what can happen when that level of collaboration, when everyone's pulling in the same direction together. We were very careful about not turning that 100 number into a number, right? We made sure not to make it into a countdown because we knew the influence that each person could have on our culture. We wanted people that would make us better as an organization, and we wanted people that could add quality and improve us, right? Challenge us as to who we already were. So it's all about hiring strategically, right? When you're interviewing, you have to ask the tough questions. When someone checks off the boxes of their resume, Beyond that, do they fit in well with the culture? So it's important to make sure that you're asking those hard questions during the process. And then beyond that, it's keeping people engaged and keeping people motivated.
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Ellie.
Hey, can I chime in here? You know,
Please.
with hiring, I think it's super important, and I've done a lot of my career, spent a lot of my career interviewing and hiring. Almost every day I'm interviewing somebody, and you know, it's super important to never sacrifice speed of hiring quickly for hiring correctly, right? And for me, I use a lot of analogies, you know, kind of sports background, and I always say you can't train somebody to be taller, right, in sports, right? Same thing with, I can't hire somebody and just train them to be motivated and train them to have a fire in the belly. I have to hire that, right? So there are certain things that attributes you can train. I can train them on how to use Salesforce or Outreach or any of the other tools that we would use, right, as a sales platform. But I'm not going to train somebody to have intrinsic motivation and a fire in the belly and hungry, right? So you have to hire for that. So that's super important when you're doing the interview process.
You know, and when you think about it, at the end of the day, there's nothing more precious than your culture. People are the core of your culture, and so you have to make sure that you're bringing in the right people.
Well done. Thanks, Ellie. Eric, let's switch gears abruptly from startups to Salesforce, which is a giant operation. You work for a really big company. Do you think that C-suite or lower level managers, do you think C-suite or lower level managers have the biggest impact on culture? And follow up to that is, what's the biggest thing they can do to make a positive impact?
So I think that's a great question. I think it's both. I don't think one drives the other. When I think about Salesforce, I think Mark Benioff's done a really good job in terms of alignment. Ellie, you mentioned alignment earlier. He's got something we call a V2 MOM. It's vision, values, methods, obstacles, and measures. And basically what that does is it helps align the whole company on what he believes we should be doing. And you guys can read it. It's public online right now. What's great about that, too, is he aligns his teams from the top down. So everyone's kind of responsible for culture. One of the things that Mark, our CEO, started to do a couple years, actually when he started the company, was he rolled out this 1-1-1 model. So it's a philanthropic model. We give 1% of our time, 1% of our equity, and 1% of our product to charitable causes. And what that allows us to do as a company is really drive a very positive outcome for charitable organizations. And there's a lot of people within Salesforce that really respond to that, right? They come to Salesforce because they have a cause they care about, and they get the ability within the company to go, support that cause. So I think it's really both. Mark does the alignment at the top level, but it's through the organization that's responsible for driving that kind of culture change.
Awesome. Grant, Dialpad's a tech company, and it's a really good one, so thank you for the awesome voice solution my reps depend on every day. It's really good. How do you think technology is affecting company culture and privacy? And again, follow up, do you think that impact will be positive or negative over the next decade?
Yeah, technology is a bit of a double-edged sword because, I mean, just like the internet, right? There's so much good that can be done with it, but there's so much time wasting and bad that could potentially be done with it too. So technology is overall net going to be positive, right? So get that out there. I think all of us here wouldn't probably be here if we didn't have a belief in technology and the future of it. Kind of speaking to the positives and negatives of it, I've seen some of the distracting impacts of technology in the workplace, right? The more connected you are, sometimes the easier it is in what we call a BYOD, bring your own device world, where you're smartphones and you're like, oh, I'm just social selling, while you're just flipping through Instagram and whatnot, right? So I think there's a balance, and I think it has to come not just from the leaders saying, hey, don't be tweeting during work or whatever. It has to come from within, again, starting with hiring the right people. Getting back to kind of an analogy, I was fortunate enough to be a part of one of the top, I played sports in college and one of the top programs in the country, and it was really interesting going to that level of sporting where it's not the coach that is yelling at you, hey, you didn't touch the line during the sprints, or hey, you cut the corner on this cone when we're running around doing training. It was the other people on the team. Right? So that's what you need to foster, is getting the other teammates to say, hey, knock it off. Like, stop doing that during work. This is when you're at your desk, you're working. So that's what you really need to foster to balance the positivity of being able to be social, do social selling and being on a Twitter or whatnot during work, but not having it, or Slack. Let's say, I don't know how many of you have Slack at work where everyone's got their kind of side Slack channels where it's like, hey, weekend stuff, right? So that's really cool because everyone's being tight-knit and close together, but it can also take them off of their task, right? So it's finding that balance.
Self-accountability.
Yeah.
Who has Slack at work? Raise your hands. How many of you is Slack? Raise your hand if Slack is eating your life. Just out of curiosity. No, it's just me. Oh, Joe.
Yeah.
It's me and you, babe. Okay. Brian, you and I both sort of operate within, we definitely do operate within Tennessee-based businesses, and unemployment is historically low in Tennessee. It's also historically low in sales across the board. So it's super challenging to recruit right now. It is in Nashville, it probably is in Chattanooga. When a company's trying to maintain a culture, but the unemployment rate is so low, what are ways to maintain a connection with new employees who might not be like an automatic fit?
Yeah, that's a great point, and you mentioned, Grant, they can't get me off Twitter at my office, but I think it's really interesting right now. We have an amazing talent market in Tennessee and in Atlanta as well, where Eric is. We have people in Nashville, Chattanooga, upstate New York, Austin, Texas. Like, these are great talent markets to hire, especially young sellers. We try to have a really structured and a really proactive, I hope, approach to training and ingratiating people to the team from day one. And we use Slack maybe to sometimes a detrimental standpoint, but I'm checking in with a new rep who's in Austin, Texas, remote, every day. And I want to make sure that he's doing well, and I want to send him a funny GIF about, whatever college football team's happening, just so he knows that Brian cares about him, 800 miles away or whatever the case may be. So I think that, we have to be great at keeping people engaged once they start, but also in the hiring process, to your point, we have to understand that we're not hiring always finished products. People are still evolving. They're not coming in as like 100% done. And we have to take a lot of responsibility to invest in them and train them to become the great salesperson we may want, whether that is in a sales development role, account executive, field sales, whatever the case may be. But yeah, that's what we are very focused on. Does this person have the right intrinsic intangibles day one? We can tell them about our product and how to sell our solution, the challenges our customers face, but we have to go find people who are going to be motivated and then develop them over a realistic time frame, not just expect them to be a great seller 30 days in.
How comfortable is Ambition hiring people in sales roles who don't have bona fide sales experience, but have that factor that you've got to believe you can coach them into it?
There's a great person over at our booth here today who's developing through our sales program right now. He came in as an intern. He is a sales development rep right now. He wants to become an account executive. I think his leaders are telling him what it takes to become that, and we're trying to be very transparent in that. And he's bought in. To call him out right now, but I think that we have to do that. I don't think that there's not 100 sellers out there who are perfect for our role today, who are raising their hands saying, I want this job. We have to go invest in people and help develop them with a pipeline.
Tyler, you just spent a lot of time essentially turning around an office. You've been really successful. You've done a heck of a job. It's been really impressive to watch. Talk to me about reinvigorating culture in your office. If a less than ideal company culture leads to severe turnover and low performance, which it often does, excuse me, how much should companies invest in cultivating and maintaining a good culture?
Well, let me start out by asking this. How many people in the room would consider yourself a sales leader? You lead a team of people that is selling a product. So I was, in my early developmental stages of my career, I was led by people that were very data-driven and very number-driven. And that's obviously a huge asset to have in a sales leadership role. But if you're in a sales leadership position and your number one priority is anything other than culture, I can tell you from experience you're missing out. Someone told me not too long ago that culture will eat strategy for breakfast any day of the week, anytime it has the opportunity. And that's proven itself to me over this past year. Creating a great place to work where people are happy, where there's excitement, where there's a positive environment always leads to positive results. The data is there, it will show itself every time. You know, at JumpCrew specifically, like we integrate crazy things. At any JumpCrew location, if you walk in the building and someone made a sale, you will hear a gong go off, super loud, people stand up and clap and cheer. So it's about creating an environment where winning is celebrated and achievement is recognized. And by creating that culture of achievement with winning, the outcome does, you know, show great results.
So follow-up question for the group. What do we think is the recipe for a quality culture? Do you want to start and we can all sort of...
Yeah, I mean, I would say the first thing that came to mind was, you know, celebrating winning. And you have to do it from a group standpoint. And it's easy for us as sales leaders to celebrate sales victories because it's easy to track. The KPIs are there, we're tracking them on a daily basis. But what about the other people in your office that don't have a sales role, that maybe it's a collections person that's gaining momentum throughout the month, or a BD rep that just got 3 contracts, or a production person that is producing more last month than they did the month prior. So I mean, there's all kinds of ways to recognize, and I think what that does is it unifies the business to be one solid unit and feel more connected to the vision of where you're going.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say is trust, I think, is what comes to mind. There's a book I read a couple years ago called The Dream Manager that talks about aligning business goals with someone's personal goals and taking away, you know, the structure of, you know, what maybe KPIs we're measuring and aligning to things that they care about. What do they want to get out of the day? And I found, like, once I started doing more of that, I started to build a lot more trust in my team. They really found that I was aligning to what they wanted to get out of life and not out of the role that they're in. And that really opened up, you know, big opportunity for me to stretch people. But really create a real fostering environment where they felt like they were included in the success of what the team was doing, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't want to pitch product, but a lot of the things you guys are talking about are things that we do every single day, and we talk to companies about as far as celebrating wins, coaching, aligning goals. But I think the trust thing is the key, and anyone here who's a leader or manager of a team, it's about, you know, I think listening more. It's about understanding what those people want, having a high level of empathy, and as you invest that energy and empathy into your team, they're investing it back into you, and they're saying, you know, if Brian wants me to be successful, if Brian wants me to have a great career, move on to the next level, they're going to go execute to do that. And, you know, just a quick example, last night after our conference event, our customer event, which was yesterday, you know, our whole team's out doing karaoke, and I think there was no one who was worried about, you know, what other people on the team were thinking about them. They're enjoying themselves with their teammates, whether it was a product person, engineer, salesperson, and that's the kind of culture that I want, where the openness is there, the trust is there, people are having fun freely, not like, what are they going to say about me at the office tomorrow if I sing, you know, maybe a really weird song, which I did.
Yeah, I agree. I think the fun aspect of culture sometimes is the first area where people go, right? They go, let's just go and, you know, buy a bunch of fun toys for them or throw stuff at a company or at employees. And that's not necessarily the only aspect of it, right? I've been at you know, small startups that literally had a coffee pot and ice until it ran out, like as a perk, right? Like that was it. And we had an awesome culture, right? I've been at other companies where they throw all kinds of stuff, you know, in Silicon Valley where just they give you everything, right? And maybe the culture wasn't as tight, right? So there's a lot that has to go into it that other than just like the fun part, and I'm kind of distracted because I'm pretty sure there's a picture of me in Wonder Woman costume right behind
Yeah, let's
us.
pause and admire Grant dressed up as
because-
Wonder Woman real quick.
So that part is very important, right? Like I think that is hugely important, but it has to be married with an incredibly hard like work ethic, right? It's that cliche statement, but like work hard, play hard. You have to have that because without it, man, you have a fun work environment, but you're not making any money. You're not making any sales, right? You've got to have that, you know, we bust our butts on the sales floor. We work, you know, and then once the day is over, then yeah, let's go sing karaoke together and not mind if we're making fools of ourselves and making mistakes on and off the floor as well.
I mean, the recipe is pretty simple, right? It's buy-in from leadership. It's everybody believing that culture is a factor and a priority. And then it's understanding what the expectations of your teams are in terms of like, what is their interpretation of culture? What do they need to feel like the culture is good? I think those are really the two points. Ellie, hot topic. Very excited to ask you this. Work from home and unlimited PTO policies. What's your opinion on how this trend impacts culture, productivity, and overall wellness?
So there's no doubt that companies are moving in this direction if they haven't already. There's studies, we've all seen them, that have come out and said unlimited PTO actually leads to people taking less time off. So there's no doubt that these plans can work, right? That being said, you have got to be ready as an organization. You have to be ready as a company because you cannot build a strong culture when you don't have people in the office. I think back to the early days at JumpCrew, and so much of the collaboration and what we've built took place inside the office, and the relationships that were built that took place there. And so you have to provide flexibility. Work life and home life are overlapping more than they ever have, and so you have to have a sense of flexibility. But at the end of the day, you want to have an environment that motivates your people, right? That values people and that provides purpose in their life, and so everyone's kind of driving towards the same thing.
Brian, I mentioned earlier that ambition's a really great tool to encourage consistent performance across teams. We're huge fans. In your opinion, are company culture and performance related and aligned? And if performance is slipping, for example, what's the most important cultural factor to focus on in an effort to turn things around?
I absolutely think they are aligned. I think that you can definitely have companies where the performance is not great, and they have maybe a developing culture. I would say more often there are companies that have great performance and the culture is bad, and it's just a leaky bucket of employees leaving or bad retention. That's a recipe for disaster down the road. But turning it around, I think, is really difficult, and I think that starts with leadership. Clearly, someone like Mark Benioff writing books and leading from the front is great, but on a smaller level of a company with 40, 50 people, that's about us. That's about us showing our team that we're going to do the work, that we actually care about them, and being very transparent and visible with here's where we want to be, here's what we're not doing well. Let's go improve those things, and we're going to do it together with you. Versus maybe performance is not good. I need you to go fix it. We try to be in the trenches every single day, every night. We're on Slack all the time, whether it is West Coast folks with problems or people on the East Coast doing demos. So any way that we can get involved in, to your point, a challenge or something that may not be going as well, we have to buy in and jump in. I think that leads that gives our leaders the ability to also replicate that behavior. And when you have a performance issue, you have things that are not going well, the first thing is to admit it, talk about how you want to fix it. And I think that will improve the culture over time if you're open and transparent.
We've got a little bit of time left. I've got 2 questions I want to buzz through. We'll start at the end. It's just open questions. What's the number one sign of a quality culture, in your opinion, Ellie?
Collaboration.
I would say the trust and accountability.
That's a good one. Since you took that one, I'll say, open communication.
I would go with feeling connected.
Yeah, I would say a purpose.
I think one of the things I look for is retention. Are employees sticking around? I mean, generally speaking, if employees are sticking around, it's a good sign. Last question, guys. Pros and cons of a startup and high growth culture. Go, Ellie.
Fast pace.
Our company's been 5 different companies over the last 5 years. Every employee count, every new objective means the company has to change, and that you have to have folks who are willing to adjust and evolve with you. And I think that fast pace is that's the right answer.
Yeah, the pro would be the ability to leap some rungs on the ladder of, if you're at a monster company that it's like you're in this role for this amount of time and it's all spelled out. But we are in a startup, it's like, all right, we need 10 new sales reps. We're going to pull from here. And you have the ability to jump up and gain a ton more experience and wear a bunch of different hats. I felt like I got an MBA going through an IPO, right? The challenge with that is there's not a career path that's clearly defined. And when you're hiring young people that are kind of in the beginning stages of their career, that's what they want. They want to know what my next step is and when that next step will be. And that's not clearly defined. And so it's that challenge.
I was in a new hire training class a couple weeks ago, and someone asked this question: if JumpCrew could have a mulligan, like you had one chance to redo it, like what would it be? And Jaren was actually in that room with me, and he's like, well, if we're gonna roll with a golf analogy, let's talk about this a little bit. So it's like going to the driving range and you just keep hitting the ball and just keep hitting the ball and just keep hitting the ball, because we make mistakes, but it's not about the mulligan, it's about how many times you're gonna step up and keep swinging until you get it right. And I think that's kind of sums up who we are.
Yeah, I would say scale. I think Salesforce, as you mentioned, is like a behemoth of a company, but we operate almost like a small business. So with a lot of autonomy in our small business units, and every unit above me, and so I think scale is always a challenge, right? It's fun as we scale, but there's pros and cons that happens when we scale, right?
That's it, time. That's it, guys. We're out of time. I appreciate everyone's time on the panel. Thank you very much. Thank you to the audience. Thank you.